Welcome to the Megacast, our live, local, 5 days per week TV, radio, and streaming show looking into all things Michigan. I'm Tyler Kieft. Today we'll be talking to a number of people about topics of interest and importance to Michiganders like you. Let's get started with what's making headlines today across the Great Lakes State on CivicCenterTV.com's local news page. Our top story comes from Lily Altavena at the Detroit Free Press. New details have emerged as a result of one of the many lawsuits against Oxford Community Schools in response to last November's shooting that took the lives of 4 students and left many others, students, faculty, and more, injured. Attorney Ven Johnson, representing those that are suing the school district, said that depositions and other evidence have shown among many of the findings that the alleged negligence of the school district included a lack of response to an email sent on November 29th of last year from one of the shooter's teachers, his first-hour teacher, regarding him searching for bullets in class, as well as noting violent TV dramas such as Breaking Bad and Dexter being a show about a serial killer, as his favorite TV shows, and then even telling one student who alleged, he said, quote, "If I ever tell you not to come to school sometimes, don't." And closed quote. Recently, 2 members of the Oxford School Board of Education resigned, including President Tim Donnelly. Buck Meir, father of the late Tate Meir, who was killed in the November shooting a year ago, responded by saying, quote, they all should resign, and closed quote. Also making headlines today from MLive's Rose White, over 1 million Michiganders will soon be eligible to apply for student loan forgiveness upwards of $10,000. Applications are set to open up in early October, just a little over a week away, and Pell Grant recipients can apply for almost double that loan amount in $20,000 worth of relief for those that are eligible. Those eligible borrowers are people that earn less than $125,000 on an individual basis, on a per year basis, or couples earning less than $250,000 annually. You can get more information on the student loan forgiveness, as well as how you can apply for up to $10,000 in individual forgiveness, or up to $20,000 if you are a Pell Grant or were a Pell Grant recipient, by visiting studentaid.gov. Studentaid.gov, and this is listed in this article. It's much more extensive. Rose White went into great detail about all of this information from the federal government on student loan relief that was announced by the Biden administration earlier on in this month. More information can be found studentaid.gov, or read this article from MLive on CivicCenterTV.com's local news page. Finally, making headlines today on our local news page from Hannah McKay at the Detroit News. The iconic American Coney Island in Detroit was broken into on Thursday morning, where thieves' intentions may not have been as fruitful as they thought they would be. The break-in happened at about 5:35 a.m. at the restaurant on West Lafayette in downtown Detroit, where the crooks got away with nothing but an empty cash register. Have fun with that one, guys. Despite the chaos of the break-in, business was not impeded at the Detroit Staple, where it remains open as it has since its original opening in 1917, not letting anything get in the way of this mom-and-pop shop business down in Detroit, an icon of Detroit businesses and Detroit restaurants. Of course, American Coney Island directly next to its rival, but also its good friend at Lafayette Coney Island in downtown Detroit. And those thieves have an empty cash register. We'll see what they are able to do with that. Hopefully, they can make something out of that cash register. Maybe put their bail money in that when they get caught, and turn that into the courts. Losers. All those headlines can be found on our website at CivicCenterTV.com on our local news page, along with links to COVID-19 updates from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, as well as the Oakland County Health Division. We have a great show ahead on this Friday edition of the Megacast. Coming up next, we'll talk to Lou Glazer from Michigan Future Incorporated. You're watching and listening to the Megacast.
Let's relish these moments, made possible by the COVID-19 vaccine. Keep the festivals going by keeping yourself protected and your COVID-19 vaccines up to date. Can I ask you a question? Why do you want to get the COVID-19 vaccine?
I don't like getting sick. The virus will die. It will be easy to not catch it. Keep my family safe and keep playing soccer. Because I love being vaccinated.
What's your hope for everyone?
I hope everybody gets the vaccine. To keep safe and strong. Be happy, having fun everywhere. Everyone stay safe and hope you get the vaccine.
Let's whoop it up for these moments. Made possible by the COVID-19 vaccine. Keep the cheering going by keeping yourself protected and your COVID-19 vaccines up to date.
Fire Prevention Week is just around the corner. Join volunteer, part-time, and on-call firefighters at this year's Fire Open House. Catch up on your fire safety knowledge with live demonstrations and hands-on activities. Chat with local businesses and resources about fire prevention, see some familiar faces, fight future fires, and make some new friends. The West Bloomfield Fire Open House, October 2nd from noon to 3 p.m. at Fire Station 1 on Orchard Lake Road.
Welcome back to the Megacast, our live daily 5 days per week TV, radio, and streaming show about all things Michigan. I'm Tyler Kieft. Learn more about our program on our website, civiccentertv.com/megacast. You'll find information on all of our partnering stations, such as My Michigan TV, and find all of our full shows and individual interviews on demand, so you can watch us on your time, anytime, or while you're not visiting us live, Monday through Friday at 10 a.m. on the Megacast. Joining us now on the program is the president of Michigan Future Incorporated. Lou Glazer is with us now on the Megacast. Lou, thanks for being with us today.
My pleasure. Thanks for inviting me.
Appreciate having you on. So first off, tell us a little bit about Michigan Future Incorporated and some of the work that you do here in the state of Michigan.
Yep. So we're a nonpartisan, nonprofit think tank that got started in 1991. And our work has largely been focused on trying to learn about the economic well-being of Michigan households in a changing economy.
So our economy obviously has made several major changes since 1991. 31 years later, it's very much a technology-driven economy. The state of Michigan is starting to follow along those ways, especially in industries that have been long-standing here in Michigan for several decades or even for over a century, such as the automotive industry. But right now, what are some of the key issues that you and your colleagues at Michigan Future are discussing that regard the future of Michigan economics and Michigan commerce that businesses and individuals even really need to be focusing on right now?
Yeah. Well, so I think the big thing is that if you look at all the successful states and regions across the country, with the exception of places like Alaska and Wyoming, which extract sort of fossil fuels. Other than that, the path to prosperity is making the transition from a factory-based to a knowledge-based economy, and the proportion of adults with a 4-year degree or more. And Michigan is having trouble with that, both in terms of the reality, but also in terms of our vision. Our vision is pretty much still sort of what I would describe as 20th century driven rather than 21st century driven. So, and the result of that is pretty severe for the state. So Michigan, if you look at the 30 years that we've been doing this work, Michigan's share of national employment has declined from 3.6% to 2.9%. If we were still at 3.6%, there'd be like 600,000 more Michiganders working. And our average wages have gone from maybe 10% above the national average to 10% below. That's like something like $13,000 per year for full-time workers. So our inability to make this transition has really caused us to be poorer compared to the country than we were when we started 30 years ago.
So there's plenty to know about or to consider about what businesses need to do to transition to more of, as you said, a knowledge-based economy. For
Right.
individual workers, as those transitions are being made by companies, they're already ahead of this. They need to be. And in many cases, especially the larger corporations and larger businesses, they are, because that's where the future projections have said they need to go. But for
Yep.
individual workers, that means more automation, that means more AI being in the fold. And so theoretically a reduction in factory jobs and a reduction even in some desk jobs. So for those individuals, what should they be doing, the individual workers, to prepare themselves for a more generally knowledge-based economy to maintain their jobs and maintain their livelihood right here in their home in Michigan?
Yeah, that is a terrific question. So we've used the analogy for a number of years that career success now looks a lot more like rock climbing than ladder climbing. We've had the traditional notion that you start on sort of the lower rung on the ladder and you move your way up, and it's sort of it's linear and predictable. Increasingly, the people who do the best, whether they have a four-year degree or not, although the four-year degree is still the best path to middle-class wages and above. But for both groups of people, the people that do best are those who, as we say, are more like rock climbers, who are able to constantly adjust. And sometimes that means taking a step back, and sometimes sideways, and sometimes starting a new career. And what we've ended up finding is that the foundation skills for all of those jobs are more generalist skills and more soft skills than they are sort of specialist skills kind of thing. So, we've ended up using a book called Becoming Brilliant that sort of defines the 6 C's as foundation skills. And, there's a whole variety of lists, but they all end up basically saying the same thing. And a lot of people call them soft skills, but they're really not soft. So they are, the 6 C's are collaboration, the ability to work with others, particularly increasingly others that don't look like you and don't think like you. Communication, content, which is sort of traditional academic skills, critical thinking, creativity, and confidence, where confidence means the ability to bounce back from failure. Those are the skills that we all need if we want to have successful careers. It's less about a first job. It's more about the ability to continue to grow and learn and adjust as technology basically is going to keep on changing what jobs are needed and what jobs pay well.
We're joined by Lou Glazer on today's edition of the Megacast. He's the president of Michigan Future Incorporated, joining us on today's program. You can learn more information and read some of their reports and their blog and news reports as well at michiganfuture.org, michiganfuture.org for more information. Lou, you're quoted in a recent article in the Detroit News that was focused on a really interesting issue here in the state of Michigan for businesses and alike for those individuals that are adjusting their careers and are constantly thinking about that next step to keep themselves ahead of the curve and therefore still able to climb that proverbial ladder, albeit with some different twists and turns along the way. And the article is from Hannah McKay at the Detroit News. It's called Michigan's Brain Drain, Why Colleges Lose the Most Graduates and Why They Leave. And it's really one of the main focuses was on when people graduate from some of the more prestigious colleges here in Michigan, they're not staying in Michigan. They're taking jobs in other places and other regions of the U.S. What are some of the key reasons behind that? And then on top of that, what are some things that businesses need to be doing in order to attract this talent coming out of really great schools throughout universities and colleges right here in Michigan?
Yep. So as I mentioned, the single best predictor of whether a state and region is prosperous or not is the proportion of adults, particularly young adults, with a four-year degree or more. So this really matters not just to recent college graduates, but to how well the state is doing. And before I get into the reason why, I mean, we should have learned that lesson from the Amazon Headquarter 2 competition, where both Detroit and Grand Rapids applied and did not even make the top 20. And Amazon said the reason why the two Michigan communities didn't make it is a lack of, of professionals and managers, sort of talent, and the absence of transit. So let's get to so the Washington Post just did an article that sort of summarized recent research that looked at the difference between the number of recent college graduates in the state and the number of young professionals living in the state. And Michigan was minus 14%, which means that 14%, we have 14% fewer young professionals here than we do recent college graduates. That's a recipe for getting poorer. And all of the states, as the article mentioned, who are positive, have one core characteristic. They have vibrant central cities, which is where young professionals are moving. And Michigan at the moment, so that's why we've argued for a very long time that sort of creating places where young professionals want to live and work, particularly high density, high amenity neighborhoods in central cities, is an economic development priority for Michigan. And the state's still having a hard time learning that lesson.
We're joined by Lou Glazer, president of Michigan Future Incorporated, joining us on today's edition of the Megacast. It is a nonprofit and non-political organization and think tank considering Michigan's economy, both now and in the future. And for reference, from this Detroit News article from Hannah McKay, a couple interesting statistics. Only 4 of the 73 Michigan higher education institutions, including the 15 four-year public universities, 28 public community colleges, and private colleges, reported a higher percentage of in-state graduates than in-state freshmen. And both Michigan Tech and the University of Michigan, who are among the top schools for STEM education in the state, they reported less than half of those graduates from 2010 to 2018 stayed in the state. Michigan Tech at 38%, with the University of Michigan at 40%. So then, Lou, as you and those in your organization are considering these issues, and what steps Michigan businesses and really the government of the state of Michigan can take right now to sort of begin bridging these gaps, albeit that it's going to take some time to really catch up to these other economies that are thriving across the union. What are those steps they should be taking or consider taking right now to start the process of bridging those gaps?
Yep. So I'd say a couple of things. The model for doing this right is Denver. Denver has done this for 30 years and has completely transformed their economy. They understood that this is an economy where talent attracts capital and have made as their priority creating a place where talent wants to live and work. In the 2020 election, the county that Austin, Texas is in, and Austin's already a talent magnet, passed a $7 billion proposal for rail transit. And Denver did the same thing. So it's creating places where talent wants to live and work, where transit is the most important ingredient. That's the stuff that Michigan should be doing now, particularly Detroit and Grand Rapids, our 2 biggest cities. But Lansing can play in this too. Kalamazoo can play. Ann Arbor has, our cities have to be more attractive to young people, or else they're going to go to Chicago, New York, Seattle, Denver, you name it. And that's the University of Michigan and Michigan Tech problem.
And we've already seen discussions in the state of Michigan or plans that have been put out about ideas to connect the entire state of Michigan through a variety of different railway routes. Yep. That would connect various regions of the state, from southeastern Michigan and the lower peninsula all the way up into the upper peninsula. And that is one of those things that really connects to this idea of transitioning the economy and catching up to some of those other places across the U.S. that have really thrived on this sort of a model over the last several decades. You mentioned Denver and you mentioned Austin. And in terms of projections, if these moves are being made right now, you mentioned Denver, it took them about 30 years to really catch up to the times and become a thriving city as it is now. What are the projections looking like if Michigan businesses and the Michigan government combine into that economic impact, start making these changes now? Just how long could it take for Michigan to really catch up to the field?
Yeah. So that's an interesting question. Yeah, I mean, I'm just trying to think through the Denver experience. I think they started to see some results in a decade, and then it kept snowballing. The problem is that even though none of this stuff can happen tomorrow, right? I mean, you're not going to sort of fundamentally change Michigan's attractiveness to young professionals overnight. But the more we wait, the longer before we make progress. So we just have to start now. I mean, that if there's a lesson from the research that the Detroit News talked about, it is you got to get started now.
More information can be found on Michigan Future's website, michiganfuture.org. You can read the reports, learn more about their initiatives on the Michigan economy, retaining and attracting talent, as Lou's talked about quite extensively today, preparing talent for the future, as well as Michigan Future schools that are helping to prepare all across the board, individuals and, of course, our economy in general for the future of global economics as our world continues to change with a rapidly increasing impact of technology. Lou, anything else for us today we haven't discussed?
No, I think so. The one quick statistic is 4 in 10 Michigan households cannot pay for basic necessities. That is not a successful economy. So that's why this transition is so important.
More information can be found michiganfuture.org. Lou, thank you very much for joining us.
My pleasure.
We'll take a break on the Megacast. When we come back, the continued impact of inflation on our economy, as well as the impact of immigration. How is that continuing to impact America's economy and the global economy as well? Oakland University's Michael Greiner joins us next to discuss on the Megacast.
In the face of COVID-19, staying healthy is important. And now the same is true as we face the flu. Influenza has the potential to infect millions, putting lives and the healthcare system at risk. Fortunately, it's easy to protect yourself. The flu vaccine is safe and effective, and with COVID-19 still spreading, it's essential. To see how you can hit this virus head-on, visit michigan.gov/flu. Now that the vaccine is available for children 5 and up, why do you recommend it?
Kids are part of the community and they can spread COVID.
We're seeing both healthy children getting sick from the virus as well as children with underlying health conditions.
They can easily bring the virus home to other people that are vulnerable and make them sick as well.
This vaccine can change that and keep children safe.
It's essential that your children get vaccinated to protect them, to protect your families, and to protect those in the community around you.
Let's savor these moments, made possible by the COVID-19 vaccine. Keep the dining out going by keeping yourself protected and your COVID-19 vaccines up to date. Let's relish these moments, made possible by the COVID-19 vaccine. Keep the festivals going by keeping yourself protected and your COVID-19 vaccines up to date. Can I ask you a question? Why do you want to get the COVID-19 vaccine?
I don't like getting sick. The virus will die. It will be easy to not catch it. Keep my family safe and keep playing soccer. Because I love being vaccinated.
What's your hope for everyone?
I hope everybody gets the vaccine to keep safe and strong. Be like happy, having fun everywhere. Everyone stay safe and hope you get the vaccine.
Let's whoop it up for these moments, made possible by the COVID-19 vaccine. Keep the cheering going by keeping yourself protected and your COVID-19 vaccines up to date.
Welcome back to the Megacast, our live daily 5 days per week TV, radio, and streaming show talking about all things Michigan. I'm Tyler Kieft. Learn more about our program on our website, civiccentertv.com/megacast, where you'll find more information on all of our partnering stations across the Great Lakes state, including My Michigan TV, and find all of our full shows and individual interviews on demand. Joining us now, once again, to talk about the state of the economy, Michigan business, and other news making headlines both in Michigan, the U.S., and around the world on an economic level is Michael Greiner, Assistant Professor of Management at Oakland University School of Business Administration. Michael, thanks for joining us again today.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me, Tyler.
Glad to have you on. And again, we'll start off with what has seemed to be the chief topic that we've discussed over the last month or so, inflation, as the Federal Reserve is expected to, for the third consecutive time, raise the interest rate by 0.75%. Now, the first time around that they did this, that was a significant move. It was an historic increase in the interest rate. And the fact that it happened a second time, just as massive, and now a third time, that really speaks to the significance of the inflation issue right now. What is the motivation behind this continued massive surge in the interest rates from the Federal Reserve, and what impact do they expect that to have on the economy?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, it really shows how serious the Fed is about attacking inflation. And in fact, you're right about the fact that they've done it now 3 times in a row, and the expectation is they're going to do it again even in November when they have another meeting. So this is not something that they are kind of like not taking seriously at all. They've made attacking inflation a major priority, and Fed Chair Powell once again made that very clear at the meeting. And the way to do that, really, unfortunately, is by slowing down the economy. You really have to look at inflation within the context of the supply and demand curve, which all of us learned, in Economics 101, where basically if you have higher supply and lower demand, then it's going to mean that prices are lower. If you have higher demand and lower supply, then it's going to mean that prices are higher. And that's true with everything throughout the economy. So basically what we've got going on right now is an economy that, since it's been bouncing back from the COVID pandemic, has been white hot. And we've seen that month after month with the figures regarding employment. And as a result of that, people have money to spend. They want to spend more. And frankly, the producers aren't able to keep up with how much demand there is. So as a result, that drives prices up. And the only way to stop that is by kind of slowing things down. So that's really what the Fed is trying to do right now. Now, the biggest impact that this has is on the housing market. And indeed, we also got some numbers just today that showed that the housing market is slowing quite significantly and that applications for mortgages are way down. So it appears that the Fed's moves are starting to have an impact.
I'm joined by Michael Greiner from Oakland University School of Business Administration on today's edition of the Megacast. As we have said, the Federal Reserve expected to enact a third consecutive 0.75% rate increase on interest rates to combat inflation. And as Michael said, you should expect that to happen for an unprecedented 4th consecutive month in November as well. And so the question would come up from those that maybe aren't as knowledgeable on this topic as you are, Michael. If it's happened for 3 straight months and inflation continues to be a major issue, how much of an impact really are these rates having, being that they're happening month to month and there seemingly aren't too many major changes, at least that regular Americans like you and I are seeing in our pocketbooks month to month?
Yeah, I once heard it described that the Fed chair is kind of like trying to control the economy like someone who's flying a kite. And the kite is the economy, and they only have control of the string way down below. And that's kind of true. The American economy is huge. It's in excess of $20 trillion. So it's absolutely gigantic, by far the largest economy in the world at this point. And so the Fed really, they can only control so much activity with what they're doing. Now, the way that they do that is as they increase interest rates, it basically makes it more expensive for people to borrow. Now, they'll say, oh, it'll increase credit card payments. And it does a little bit. I think I saw that the average credit card bill is going to increase for most people by about $25. Similarly, it could increase the cost of buying a car, which again, that's true to an extent. But when you're talking about those smaller amounts of money, might increase the cost of buying a car by say $50 a month. So not huge amounts of money. The place you really see the impact is in the housing market. Because when people go from, say, paying 3.5% on a mortgage to paying upwards of 6% for a mortgage, and we just saw that mortgage rates now have risen to more than 6.3%, so they're really going up, then that really slows things down very quickly. And then it's kind of like a house of cards that keeps spreading. So as people are less likely to be able to get mortgages, then there are less people out buying new homes. As a result of that, there's less new home construction, which means that there are less people working in the construction industry or in the businesses that supply that. So there might be layoffs there and fewer people working there. There's less money than kind of flowing around in the economy and less demand for the goods and services out there, which then that means that the economy kind of slows down. And in fact, I just noticed a report that said that we've never had a slowdown in the housing market that didn't result in a recession, which just shows how important a part of the American economy the housing market is. And in fact, this last set of inflation, where we were kind of surprised with how high it was driven almost exclusively, number one, by energy, particularly electric and gas, but number two, by housing costs. So that's kind of what we call a lagging indicator, which means that we kind of see that after it's already happened. And it takes a little while for these things to kind of boil their way through the economy. So that's kind of where the Fed is trying to kind of balance this. They don't want to get too aggressive because on the one hand, if they get too aggressive, then eventually when these things really do kind of hit the fan, then suddenly you're dealing with a major recession. They don't want that. So they want to kind of balance it where, yes, we get enough recession to bring down inflation, but not so much recession that it severely impacts the job market to the point where people are losing jobs in a big way.
We're joined by Michael Greiner from Oakland University on today's edition of the Megacast. He is an assistant professor of management in their School of Business Administration. More information can be found on all the programs at Oakland University by visiting oakland.edu, oakland.edu. And there's no question that there is an immense impact on the U.S. economy and the world economy from immigration. And here in the U.S., according to the Washington Post, data from Customs and Border Protection indicated that more than 3.6 million people have been prevented from entering the country or apprehended after doing so in the past 2 years. Michael, these immigration numbers have a number of different effects on the U.S. economy. On the one hand, people are trying to come to the U.S. to create a better life for themselves. And on the other hand, when they do get into the U.S., in many cases, they're filling jobs. This has been the old adage that they're filling jobs that the American people that are already here simply are not interested in filling. Give us some insight on just how important immigrants, particularly those that are coming up from Mexico, which seems to be the most common border crossing for immigration in the U.S. that we've heard of over the last several decades, the impact that they have on our economy.
Yeah, and I'm glad you bring this up because unfortunately, this is an issue that's really complicated that unfortunately has kind of been boiled down into this political football. And it really kind of misses the point here. Like you mentioned, the fact that there are 3.7 million immigrants who've come across the border. Yes, that's a lot. But the vast majority of them have either been sent back or essentially detained. Really, the only ones who are kind of left to go out there are families and children. So, kind of this demagoguing that we see on both sides of this issue really kind of misses the point here. But one thing that I think economists almost universally agree on is the fact that the United States needs immigration, that it is one of the great strengths of our country that we have this tradition of immigration here and that we are a nation of immigrants. There are a couple of reasons for that. Number one, as a country becomes more developed, like the United States, like Japan, like Europe, for example, you see the birth rates among the people who are born there go down. Typically we talk about the replacement birth rate being about 2.2 children per family, and And among the native-born Americans, similarly to native-born Japanese or native-born Europeans, the families that fall within that category, they have actually fallen below the replacement birth rate, which means that if you don't have some source of new people coming into the country, the size of the country will actually start shrinking. And you can see that happening in a number of countries. In fact, in Japan, that's happening. France has really struggled with this issue. They've been very successful at providing incentives to get people to have more children, essentially, but it's been at huge cost to their economy. You see, even in China right now, where they're starting to struggle with potentially a declining birth rate, and projections are that China has actually already reached the peak of its population. It's going to start declining now. The United States, though, has really avoided that problem. And the reason we've avoided that problem is because we do have this constant source of immigration with people coming across the Mexican border. Now, you mentioned, and elsewhere, by the way. Now, you mentioned the Mexican border. Interestingly enough, though, most of the people coming across the Mexican border at this point are not from Mexico. In fact, the largest source of immigrants right now are from Venezuela. We all have heard about all the problems going on in Venezuela and how basically they have a completely corrupt kind of communist socialist government where the economy has completely collapsed as a result of that. And I saw that the United Nations projected that there are as many immigrants coming out of Venezuela as there are from Ukraine, which is really saying something. And most of those immigrants are coming to the United States. So the question is then, is this a good thing or a bad thing? Well, when you look at the data, people will say, oh, they take up, they're a burden on society because they take up certain services. But the reality is that immigrants work at a higher rate than native-born Americans. In other words, that where native-born Americans, about 62% of them will be in the job market or so. Among immigrants, upwards of 65 to 66% of them actually enter the job market. So more of them, a higher percentage of them actually work and thus pay taxes and contribute to the overall economy. Similarly, what's been found is that 93% of people who receive some type of benefit from either the federal or the state government are actually either working during that same period or married to someone who works. And that kind of emphasizes the fact that you've got a lot of these families who tend to take kind of short-term work that is temporary. And as a result, they might need assistance for certain periods. But generally speaking, they're working and contributing to the economy. And you can't underestimate the fact also kind of the dynamism that these people generate, which is the fact that they bring the second generation who are born here tend to be more highly educated, more productive, contributing more to the economy than people who are in the third generation or later in terms of being native born here. So that's why we see all these people who are immigrants winning or one generation removed, winning Nobel Prizes, being major contributors to different industries, including the high-tech industry, et cetera. Really, the place that the United States is generating that dynamism is from the immigrant workforce. And I just want to point out one more factor here that just shows how important it is, which is that as the baby boomers are starting to get older, that means that there's going to be more and more of a demand on services like Medicare and Social Security in particular. So the question is, who's going to pay for that? Well, if we have fewer people working, then that means the burden's going to be higher on those people who are still working. How can we avoid fewer people from being the ones to support that? Well, by having more immigrants come in and basically paying more taxes to support the people who are retired. So again, almost universally, economists agree that immigration is a good thing for the United States, and hopefully we can get past a little bit of the rhetoric on this issue.
Yeah, I got to look a little bit deeper than just the political sides of both of these arguments from all different angles, and look at the impact that's being had by immigration, by other issues as well. Michael, thank you so much for joining us this week.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me, Tyler. Have a great weekend.
You as well. Oakland.edu for more information on programs in their School of Business Administration and other programs across the board at Oakland University. We'll take a break. On the other side, we'll come back. We'll talk to a couple of individuals who are working to help veterans prepare for a prosperous and enjoyable life after military service when they come back home from serving our country. That's up next. You're watching, listening to the Megacast.
Fire Prevention Week is just around the corner. Join volunteer, part-time, and on-call firefighters at this year's Fire Open House. Catch up on your fire safety knowledge with live demonstrations and hands-on activities. Chat with local businesses and resources about fire prevention, see some familiar faces, fight future fires, and make some new friends. The West Bloomfield Fire Open House, October 2nd from noon to 3 p.m. at Fire Station 1 on Orchard Lake Road.
In the face of COVID-19, staying healthy is important. And now the same is true as we face the flu. Influenza has the potential to infect millions, putting lives and the healthcare system at risk. Fortunately, it's easy to protect yourself. The flu vaccine is safe and effective, and with COVID-19 still spreading, it's essential. To see how you can hit this virus head-on, visit michigan.gov/flu. Now that the vaccine is available for children 5 and up, why do you recommend it?
Kids are part of the community and they can spread COVID.
We're seeing both healthy children getting sick from the virus as well as children with underlying health conditions.
They can easily bring the virus home to other people that are vulnerable and make them sick as well.
This vaccine can change that and keep children safe.
It's essential that your children get vaccinated to protect them, to protect your families, and to protect those in the community around you.
Let's savor these moments, made possible by the COVID-19 vaccine. Keep the dining out going by keeping yourself protected and your COVID-19 vaccines up to date.
Welcome back to the Megacast, our live daily 5 days per week TV, radio, and streaming show about all things Michigan. I'm Tyler Kieft. You can learn more about our program and find us on demand on civiccentertv.com/megacast, where you'll also find information and links to every single one of our partnering TV, radio, and streaming outlets, so you can watch us in your local area, as well as find us on demand and watch us on your own time, anytime, at civiccentertv.com/megacast. Joining us now on the program is Joshua Parish. He is a board member of VETLIFE, an organization focused on helping veterans return to civilian life here in the United States following their service to our country. Joshua, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here.
Appreciate having you on to talk about this very important work that your nonprofit organization does to support our veterans who are coming back to the U.S. and transitioning from life in the military to life as a civilian after their service. Can you tell us about some of the ways that VETLIFE helps to make that transition? And what are some of the important key points of producing that transition from veteran life to civilian life that maybe are often overlooked in general society that doesn't have this knowledge?
Sure. That's a great question. So what we know is that, and we'll just take Michigan, for example. Michigan has around 600,000 veterans, but in 2019, less than 18% of that population was connected to a federal benefit they earned through their military service. So that means that there's hundreds of thousands of veterans in Michigan, not unlike myself back in the day before I was plugged into the system that I had to search for, exhaustively. What we know is that veterans are entitled to, and these are just a few of the benefits, education assistance, VA home loan, disability compensation, and VA health care. And so what I tell people is each veteran that gets connected to their benefits stimulates the local economy. Just think about it this way. The more veterans that you have coming through your county Department of Veterans Affairs doors, getting screened for their benefits, brings more money down from the federal level down to the state. So we'll take disability compensation, for example. Veterans are rated at a 0 to 100% scale, and the federal government pays you monetarily for the injuries that you incurred or aggravated during your military service. So let's take one veteran, for example. If they're rated at 100%, that brings in at least $3,000 a month down to that local economy being spent at your local store. So it just benefits our local communities to have that targeted outreach. And unfortunately, there's a misconception, not just in Michigan, but throughout the country, that veterans are well taken care of after they leave the military service. And that just couldn't be farther from the truth.
Yeah, there's so many of these benefits that you just mentioned that are just a handful of the benefits and many of the issues that they go back to that veterans face when they come back from service of all different kinds. And can kind of speak to that issue and how you and others with VetLife came together when this organization was formed in 2018 to help bridge some of those gaps and help your fellow veterans return to civilian life here in the U.S.
So yeah, another great question. So my wife and I actually started VetLife sitting at our kitchen table because when I left the military in 2008, I really struggled. And the way that it's explained to you when you leave the military, when you do go through TAPS or when you ETS, which is your estimated time of separation, the federal government tells you that, oh yeah, it'll be very easy to get the benefits that you earned. You just have to go to the VA. And if you ask any veteran what I guess a trigger term would be to irritate them, it would be just go to the VA, because the VA is such an all-encompassing term. And I think it's intentionally vague because when the government knows that you're going to leave the military, they can just wash their hands of you. And so that's why organizations like VetLife exist, because of the actual physical, mental struggles that I went through when I left the military. And quite honestly, there was a very low point in my life where I just didn't want to be here anymore. And I felt like nobody cared about me. I felt like I served my country honorably, faithfully. And when I got home, they make you feel like you're a broken person and that you don't deserve these benefits. So when we created VetLife as a veteran family ourselves, we designed every event that we do to be centered around the family. So we keep it very simplistic in our approach. And I'll just reference a few examples of our events. VetFest has been designated as Michigan's largest free outreach event for veterans and their families. We have literally connected tens of thousands of veterans over the last 5 years to their benefits. We invite the veteran and their family to, it's somewhat like a resource fair, but we invite the resource providers that we vet personally, and everything is free to the veteran and their family. Free food, free band, free prizes, free static displays, free face painting. We have everything for every part of your family, your spouse, the veteran, the children, your grandparents. And we do that intentionally because we know that a lot of veterans are afraid of the VA. They've had negative experiences. So when we wanted to, I guess, bridge that gap and make people feel comfortable, make people feel like they mattered again, and we thought that bringing the family into the process was going to ensure success for the veteran to get connected to their benefits.
And it's important too that you make that point, because when a veteran returns home from their service, no matter what kind of service it was or how extensive, they did serve the country in combat or in other missions throughout the world that the U.S. military participates in. It has an impact not just on them as individuals, but on everybody that is in their life, especially, like you said, for those that are coming back and just mentally the fatigue that comes from facing the reality of your life changing. It can be significant. So what does VetLife do in addition to helping the individual veterans with some of those steps that they can take to improve their life coming back into the fold as a civilian, but also to help the families make those transitions as well, so they can help their beloved veterans too?
Sure. So we know that when you leave the military, traditionally you face four main issues every veteran faces, one level or another. That's education, employment, healthcare, and quality of life. So what we've done at VetLife is we've created what we call our 4 core pillars of excellence. So we bring in subject matter experts. We bring in community partners. We call them pillar partners. And the problem is not that the resources are not available. it's that the veteran doesn't understand what resources there are for them. And number two, unfortunately, there are a lot of organizations out there that say that they do things to help veterans, but in all actuality, they do not. So that's why it's so important that we vet every community partner, every resource provider that we bring on to VetLife to make sure or to ensure that they are doing what they say that they're doing. Because here's the thing, there was a DOD study years ago that stated that a veteran will ask for assistance 3 times on average. So if that veteran does not obtain that assistance within that third time, essentially they just blend back into society, which I think adds to the confusion and adds to that number of the hundreds of thousands of veterans that are still not connected to their benefits. So as I mentioned before, bringing the family into the process is something that nobody else is doing. Go to the state agencies, go to the federal agencies, even go to the county agencies, and you're really not seeing the family involved in the process. It's always just tailored to the veteran.
We're joined by Joshua Parish from VetLife on today's edition of the Megacast. You can find more information in a couple of different places. You can find it on their website, vetlifetoday.org, vetlifetoday.org, or by going to sharedetroit.org. Go into their Find a Nonprofit section and search for VetLife. You can also find information on 324 additional charities and nonprofits in the Metro Detroit area there, as well as upcoming events that they'll be participating in, including the Oktoberfest Charity Pub Crawl happening October 1st from noon to 5 p.m. and Harvest for Heroes in November 20th, 12 p.m. to 3 p.m. And this is a lot of work. All the work that VetLife does to help these veterans, it is extensive. You're helping people with issues that are often very complicated and to get services that are very much needed for these veterans. How much of an impact can volunteers have helping your organization to do some of this work? And what sort of volunteer opportunities may there be with VetLife?
Well, volunteers are integral, not just because they're at the events experiencing the good things that we're doing in the community, but they're also a very good sounding, a good marketing piece to go out into the community and say, look at all of these great things that VetLife is doing. To give you an example, we had a female spouse and her veteran at our last VetFest event. Recently, she reached out to me and said, hey, we want to hold a fundraiser for you at one of our high school football games. So we get in front of a couple thousand people tonight in front of a football game and talk about all the great things that VetLife is doing. And so I mentioned before, all of our events are completely free to the veteran and their family. Really, the only thing that they have the option to purchase is one of these VetLife t-shirts that I'm wearing. And my wife always jokes around. She's like, you're a walking billboard, because all I ever do is wear my VetLife gear because I'm so proud of all the things that, we've accomplished and that she's accomplished. So I would say, yeah, we would love volunteers. So for VetFest, we get over 3,000 veterans. So you can imagine you need 20 to 30 volunteers just for that event alone. You referenced our Harvest for Heroes. That is an annual event where we provide Thanksgiving turkey baskets to veterans and their families. I grew up really, really poor, and I grew up not being able to have turkey on Thanksgiving. So when I left the military, I said, I'm never going to allow a veteran under our watch to ever go without a Thanksgiving meal, a Christmas meal. So we pass out somewhere between 200 to 250 turkey baskets annually. And we have some community sponsors that step up and help out. That entails volunteers. The pub crawl entails volunteers. We have a Little Troops on the Field event where we do free football clinics and we work with the Detroit Lions. So if you want to volunteer, please reach out to us at contact@vetlifetoday.org. And what will happen is you will be entered into our volunteer database. And so when the event comes available, we'll reach out to you and we'll say, hey, do you want to volunteer for this event? And once we get the required amount of volunteers, we'll just ask if you want to volunteer for the next event if we can't fit you in this one.
Well, Joshua, appreciate you joining us and telling us about the great work that you and others with VetLife do. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, sir. And I appreciate you.
Appreciate it. More information can be found, and you can also make a tax-deductible donation to this 501c3 nonprofit at VETLifeToday.org. VETLifeToday.org. That does it for this week's editions of the Megacast. Find more information and find us on demand. CivicCenterTV.com/Megacast. You'll find us throughout the week and the weekend for replays as well across our network. In the meantime, we'll be back next week with new editions of the Megacast.